technology just work? Sorry, I know it's a weird way to start the show, but I'm trying to get the Facebook Live up here. By the way, you can like us on Facebook at Beyond Reason, or you can send me a friend request on Facebook, and it was not working. Hold on. Bear with me, people. I'm going to get this up here. It is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. We are doing the show till 9 p.m. tonight. If you want to contribute to the show, you can. You can call 407-916-5400, or you can text to 23680. So,
what you need is the special engineering hammer that we have hanging on the wall there.
There's an engineering hammer, break for emergencies?
You just, tap it a few times on the right side of the computer and things will be just fine.
Oh, okay. I'm sure the engineers will love that. Don't worry, I'm very tempted to do that. I don't know if it's Facebook or if it's our program or what is going on.
Was it running slow for you?
Yeah. The video thing comes up and then I push go live and it's like, I blame Zuckerberg.
Yes.
I think it's him.
Sue him.
I think he does not want this show to go on the air.
That's right.
He does not want the show on Facebook Live, and it's bias and all that stuff. Okay, so I actually want to, don't worry, we're going to get into some Trump stuff. Trump had a press conference today. I have some audio from that, which he defends himself and said some, he actually was pretty reasonable today. So he might be one of my voices of reason today.
Oh, boy.
Believe it or not. The problem is he'll do the opposite on Twitter. So he'll say something reasonable in a press conference, and then on Twitter later he'll make some noise.
Last night I made the comment about his reaction, or the White House's reaction to the naming of the special counsel.
Yes.
And I said, hey, he was pretty even-tempered there. Well, this morning that changed. That's when he went off and had a few choice tweets about the whole thing.
Yeah, I actually thought of you when I saw the tweet, Tom Benson, because I was like, well, there goes our whole thing from last night, saying maybe he learned his lesson.
Apparently last night was actually drafted by somebody in the White House in the communications department, and this morning it was the real Donald Trump.
Exactly. Okay, so I want to get into something a little bit different to start out with, because there's been a lot of controversy on this subject, and it has to do with the show Last Man Standing. Actually, one of my favorite shows out there right now. And of course, I'm trying to get the website up right now to read the details on the Last Man Standing. It's not working.
Is that right?
It's some other websites are working. This isn't working. Why? There's a giant conspiracy against me. I know people say there's a conspiracy against Donald Trump. No, there's a conspiracy against me. But anyways.
But you're not paranoid.
Yeah, no, not at all. Anyway, there has been a lot of controversy in this and talk about this, because the show Last Man Standing, which is one of my favorite shows with Tim Allen, a lot of people, especially in the right, think that the reason why that show was canceled was not because of, poor ratings or anything, but because Tim Allen's character, Mike Baxter, is a big-time conservative. And there's a lot of conservative views in that show, and they think that's why ABC didn't want to fight for it. ABC wanted to cancel it for that reason, even though it was on 6 seasons. Before we get to that, I want to play a clip here from it, just give you an idea of what happens on the show. And there's a couple of angles I want to get to, and I want to get your reaction as well as why you think maybe it was canceled. Oh, look at that. Facebook Live just came up.
Hey.
So we're on Facebook Live now, just like 2 minutes late. Okay, here's a clip from the show.
Do you want me to give you some notes before you send it in?
Why, send it in? What do you mean?
The faculty committee needs to approve it after they check for microaggressions.
Microaggressions? You mean like midget warriors?
No, they're objectionable words or phrases. For instance, midget warriors.
I know what microaggressions are. It's the latest liberal attack at free speech. And a lot of fun if you do them right.
The university has a list of stuff they don't allow speakers to say, to protect the students.
From what, ideas?
It's just the way that my school does things, Dad. Please, my grade is riding on this.
Fine.
All right, so there you go. You can obviously see that his character is very conservative and very funny and very likable, and a lot of conservatives, including me, like that show. Now, Tim Allen tweeted out, finally responding to all this. He said, stunned and blindsided by the network I call home for the last 6 years, hashtag Last Man Standing. So originally, Variety magazine had an article on this, and they said the reason why it was canceled was due to waning ratings, whatever waning means. But it came out that they actually had very good ratings. It consistently performed well on the network, delivering 8 million viewers on Friday nights. And that's not including Netflix and all that stuff. It obviously, for a Friday night especially, it was the anchor of that night, and it did really well. So the whole argument that it was just because of ratings and poor ratings really didn't fly with a lot of people. Well, the president of ABC Entertainment, Channing Dungey, he dismissed claims that the show was canceled for political reasons. This is what he said, but he does not say it was because of ratings either, which is very interesting. Here's the quote from him. He says, "We make tough calls and cancel shows that we otherwise would have loved to stay on the air. That's the job." He said, "But I canceled Last Man Standing for the same business and scheduling reasons that I canceled The Real O'Neills, Dr. Ken, The Catch, and American Crime." He later said, "Last Man Standing was a challenging one for me because it was a steady performer in the ratings. But once we made the decision not to continue with comedies on Friday nights, on Fridays, that's where we landed." So he's saying that they wanted to get away from comedy on Friday night, and that is why they canceled it. And it was just one of those shows that got offed. Here's the thing with that. And by the way, I just saw a story on Fortune that I'm literally just seeing right now that came out 1 hour ago that says it might actually move to another network. It says, this is from Fortune.com, says Last Man Standing could get a new home after ABC cancellation. It's not saying, let me see if I can see where.
You would think some other network like CW or one of the others that are out there would want to pick up 8 million people.
You would think so. Or even if they just did it solely on Netflix or Hulu. You know, yeah. Hulu has, I think the Mindy Project was originally on Fox, I believe.
And there's been several reboots on Netflix.
Yeah. The Mindy Project was an example where it was originally on a network, and then Hulu eventually took it over, and it's just a Hulu original now. So that's very possible as well. Here's the thing, though. Here's my take on all this. I think it's entirely possible that they wanted to get away from comedies on Friday nights. That being said, if this was, say, Modern Family, or a show about a homosexual couple, or a show that had a obvious progressive liberal agenda in it, message in it, do you think that the president of ABC would have been so callous in just canceling the show?
Probably not.
I think that president of ABC would have made a stronger effort to keep the show, especially if they had good ratings, and maybe move it to another night.
Well,
that's entirely possible.
The one show that was canceled, the Real O'Neills, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that supposedly has been slammed by a lot of people as being anti-Catholic, that show.
I've not watched.
I've never seen it either. I just know what I read in the papers.
Yeah, so, and I think part of it is as well, and this really, really bothers me. There's two reasons why I really like this show. The first reason is because I'm just a fan of that format. It is a traditional multi-camera sitcom format. You have the multi-camera, steady cam, and you have the laugh track, and it's a traditional sitcom type, family sitcom type feel. That format is always gold, yet so many of these networks are going away from it, and I really don't understand that. But that's the kind of show I like. I could watch sitcoms like that all day. I love that show. I love The Big Bang Theory. You know, I love Friends, Frasier, Cheers. I love all those shows. Seinfeld, of course, but there's new ones out as well that, you know, I liked Mike and Molly. That was a traditional sitcom format. I just like that kind of show. I'm just always been a fan. I think there's comedy to it and there's silliness to it, but there's also some reality to it. I think it's a little more real than some of these other shows like The Office and Parks and Rec, that more edgy type of feel, the more mock-you-drama type of feel.
Yeah.
People like that because it was different, but I think some of that's kind of, fading. It's kind of a fad, but it's not as relatable to me, those kind of shows. But for some reason, the networks are going away from that. TV Land had a really popular show called The X's. That was a sitcom. And it was canceled a couple years ago. And the only reason it was canceled is because it was that format and they wanted to go away from that format. It's
an expensive shooting production.
Well, that's true, too. That's why a lot of times they go to reality TV and stuff. It can be a lot cheaper. But I just, that bothers me because I like that format. The other reason why I'm sad that this show is gone is I think there's actually a lot of misconceptions about the show. A lot of people are saying, well, this is a conservative show and, it has a conservative message and that's why middle America likes it and they're trying to silence a conservative message. Well, if you actually watch the show, Tim Allen's character, Mike Baxter, is a conservative. And it does have some of that conservative messaging in there, that good family message in there. And a lot of times he's the smartest one in the show.
Of course.
In other shows, they try to make the conservative the stupid one.
Yeah.
They don't do that here.
Yeah.
That being said, there is a part of the show that he's really one of the only conservatives. Let's put it that way. He is surrounded. That's kind of why it's called Last Man Standing. One of the reasons it's called Last Man Standing is he's in a family of girls. He has 3 daughters and a wife. But the other reason, I think, is because he's surrounded by, feminists and leftists and stuff like that. So there's a lot of other points of view on the show. It's not just a conservative point of view. So it's a misconception to say it's a conservative point of view. The other thing, though, is a lot of times they'll have their disagreements, and the show really addresses current topics very well. I think some of the best shows are really good at doing that, but also having comedy and making it funny. It addresses the current topics as well. But at the end of the show, usually at the end of the day, they usually come to a mutual agreement. They usually learn to get along despite their differences. And they usually realize that family and family values come first. So even though they have their disagreements in politics and maybe how to raise kids in the next generation and some of the other political hot button issues of the day, they have their differences. But at the end of the day, they come together as a family. And at the end of the day, they work it out as a family. And at the end of the day, they learn to listen to each other more as a family. And to me, I think that is really needed in today's society. I really do. Because we talk about on this show all the time how we are so divided on all this stuff to the point we talk about yesterday how marriages are being broken up over, who voting for Trump or something. And friendships are being broken up. And people are deleting each other's profiles on Facebook. And all of that stuff. You can't have a normal conversation with someone because of the divide. And this show was kind of a comic relief to that, what was going on in the world, but a comic relief and realizing, we can have our differences, but it's not the end of the world. We can still get along. And I think that's an important message for today. And I think it did it so well that it was popular. And it's sad to see that go. Because I know liberals who like this show, who are not necessarily conservatives, who like this show because it's a funny show. I mean, that's another reason why I really like it, is because it literally makes me laugh out loud. There are some shows that I'll watch, but I'm not really laughing out loud. This was one of those shows that as I'm watching, I will literally laugh out loud. There's only a few shows that really make me do that. Frasier was another one. If I watch Frasier,
I still watch
I do too. I will laugh out loud at my TV at it. Seinfeld was another one, obviously. But I think it's kind of sad. I hope they can find another home for it. And I hope they can keep it going because I think it's important. Now, there's been talks of boycotting ABC over this. Like I said, there's talks about getting it on another network. A lot of people are really upset. They think it's all about politics. We'll see what happens. I think politics could play a role because ABC has pushed an agenda. They had some kind of special recently. I guess it was kind of a documentary on, the LGBT community.
Sure.
And they pushed that really hard. And it was a ratings flop, by the way. But they were not going to cancel that or anything because of what it was. I guarantee you they didn't make an effort here to really keep the show because they're just like, oh, well, it's an old school show. We don't want old school shows anymore. We want to be different. We want to be edgy. We want to be like Modern Family. And I think it's sad. And plus, it's just really funny. And Tim Allen's really funny. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. If you have any comments on that, I want your reaction to that as well. We have a lot more to get to on this subject and a lot of other subjects. Go ahead, Tom Benson.
Trivia here for you.
Yes.
Who invented the multi-camera production shoot of sitcoms?
I want to say Lucille Ball.
Her husband, Desi.
Her husband, yes.
Yeah.
That was the first show to really do that, wasn't it?
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. I read about that recently. It's very interesting.
He gets the credit for that, yeah.
Yeah. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. I never understood, by the way. I wish I would have come up with this idea and been able to fund it or something. But how come there's not a sitcom channel? Sitcoms play on a bunch of different channels, but I would love a channel that's just sitcoms.
Well, they have game show
Yeah, they have game show channels. They have the Food Network. They have Home and Garden. Why not a sitcom channel? There's so many different sitcoms you could play. You could play Home Improvement. You could play Last Man Standing. You could play Frasier, Cheers, Drew Carey Show. I could go on and on and on. There's enough material to do it. I never understood why they never did it.
Could be more expensive production to shoot.
That's well, it's not production. It's just
the reruns.
The syndication can be kind of costly.
So you got to pay, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have no other production value, if you have no live shows or anything, you're just playing sitcoms, whether older or newer.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like there's a way to get that done. Let's get that done, Tom Benson. Let's start a sitcom network.
I'll make a memo on that.
All right, 407-916-5400, text to 23680. We are going to get into Trump stuff later in the show. I have a lot of other different topics I want to get to, and we have our Voices of Reason of the day. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
You want to listen to Beyond Reason Radio live on your smartphone? Download the Beyond Reason Radio app now. Available in the Google Play or Apple App Stores. Your voice of truth in a world of fake news. Beyond Reason Radio continues right now.
So President Trump said Thursday he is very close to naming a new FBI director to replace James Comey. And his leading contender is... You know who that is, Tom Benson?
I did hear this today. It's very interesting.
Yes, it is Democratic Senator Joe Lieberman. And actually, he was asked point blank by a reporter in the Oval Office Thursday if Lieberman was the leading contender. And Trump replied yes.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
His last couple of years were as an independent, though, not as a Democratic member of the Democratic Party.
Him and McCain have been trying to do their whole independent bromance, I think. But what? I'm kind of confused. Why him? Where did this come from? I really did not see this coming. I don't think anyone really saw this coming in terms of Joseph Lieberman. So why all of a sudden is he thrown out there?
He's seen as an independent, and if you go back far enough, he's a Democrat. So how can the other Democrats say no?
Yeah, I have read some things that it would be very difficult for the Democrats to not confirm him.
Right, and he was influential as a member of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it says Lieberman's law enforcement, according to Fox News, Lieberman's law enforcement experience stems from his two-term tenure as Connecticut's Attorney General, spanning from 1983 until his resignation in 1989 when he was elected to the U.S. Senate. So, very interesting choice. If you want to comment on that, you can. I really, I don't know. I think it's kind of out of nowhere where that came from. Bud, who hosts the morning show on this station, we're live on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. He does host Good Morning Orlando. I know he's going to talk about that tomorrow morning. He thinks it's a disaster. So we'll see what happens. I'm not sure what his take is on that, so you'll have to tune in tomorrow. By the way, if you miss any of this show, this is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. Tom Benson is producing. You can catch the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. We're on Facebook Live as well, just like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. So we've been speaking about the entertainment world a little bit. We were talking about Last Man Standing, the sitcom being canceled, and how really, it's kind of upsetting because it was kind of a good relief from all the craziness. It addressed a lot of current stuff, but it did it in a way that was a comic relief, and you still kind of felt good at the end of the show. And it focused on how we can come together as a family, even if we disagree on some of this stuff. Well, I don't know if you heard about this, but someone else, who's big in the entertainment world, obviously, is Jimmy Fallon.
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear this story, Tom Benson and others, that Jimmy Fallon was devastated by the Trump interview backlash?
I heard this, yes.
It says, I got this from page6.com. It says, no one was more upset with Jimmy Fallon's interview with Donald Trump than Fallon. The president appeared on The Tonight Show in September only to have his hair literally ruffled by the NBC late night host. See, one thing I like about Fallon is he's not overtly political. He's not always attacking Trump.
He's more in the mold of Johnny Carson.
Yeah, I mean, he makes fun of Trump, but it's not in the same way as like a Colbert. It's not
vicious.
It's not vicious attacks, and it's not necessarily about policy or anything like that. It's just kind of making fun of who Trump's character, which I think we can all be okay with as long as you do it to both sides. But apparently, he faced such a swift and severe backlash, and Fallon's rival Stephen Colbert used that to his advantage, apparently. But he faced such a backlash because a lot of people thought he was humanizing Trump too much.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And that was such a bad thing. How could you make Trump look like a decent human being?
A regular guy.
And by the way, I think it did do that. I think it is, that was one of Trump's appeals, that he could go on shows like that and kind of make fun of himself. Fallon said, I just can't read Twitter. Then I can't read the news. I can't read the internet. He says, I'm a people pleaser. If there's one bad thing on Twitter about me, it will make me upset. So after all this happened, I was devastated. I didn't mean anything by it. I was just trying to have fun.
Sure.
What's wrong with that? I don't understand this divide here. He goes on and he said he didn't really do it. He says, I didn't do it to humanize him. I almost did it to minimize him. I didn't think that it would be a compliment. He did the thing that we all wanted to do. Can't we just come to a point where we just say it was a funny bit, where we just laugh, where we just enjoy the show and understand that, that's what the show is, that we don't have to, he doesn't have to go on a show like that and be viciously attacked, and we have to attack Trump because it's an NBC late night show. That's the model of a late night show now. I don't get it. If I were talking to Jimmy Fallon, I would say don't sweat it. Your ratings will come back. I mean, he's fallen a little bit behind Colbert, but it's not going to last forever. I think Jimmy Fallon, I was one who never thought Jimmy Fallon was that funny. When he's on Saturday Night Live and some of his movies, I was never like, oh, I'm such a big fan.
Mm-hmm.
But, when he started his show, I thought it was really good. And he was really good at sort of the sketch bits.
Yeah.
That offered a new element to a late night show that was never really been there before.
And Carson used to do that.
Yeah. And so I think he'll do just fine. I think he will last longer than the Colberts of the world.
He still has a little bit of a lead in the 18 to 49 Wonder Demo. But Colbert's doing well overall with 12+ audience.
Yeah, but that's for political reasons, and I just can't think that'll last.
It's not going to last forever, no.
And I don't think Colbert's is funny. I think he just I've watched some of his bits lately, and it's just attacking Trump. It's like the Saturday Night Live bit as well. Did you see this week's Saturday Night Live bit with Melissa McCarthy?
No.
She plays Sean Spicer. When I saw the first time she did that, I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was unique.
Yeah. She kind of showed the anger of Spicer in a very exaggerated way. That's what comedy does. But then I looked at this one last week. It wasn't funny at all. It was just, oh, well, I'm Sean Spicer. I'm angry. Okay, we get the bit. Oh, Trump's a liar and stupid. Okay, we get the bit. And then she drives her podium to Trump Tower, and then they kiss at the end. Him, it's Sean Spicer and Trump, she's upset that Trump might fire him, and then they just make out at the end or something. It's in middle schoolers, right? This is stupid.
Yeah.
It's not creative. It's not funny. It's just you trying to bash the president and his administration. And I don't mind making fun of Trump, But I expect better from Saturday Night Live. Well, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe that's the problem. But I expect better from true comedians to really have an art to what they're doing, real creativity, and not just, okay, how can we make Trump look stupid this week? And that's it.
In my opinion, Colbert plays to the audience and delivers things he thinks they want to hear. Fallon is more of an entertainer.
Oh, yeah. Well, Fallon's not a political guy. Colbert started as a political guy. His show, The Colbert Report, was a political show. It was a political comedy, but it was overtly political. Fallon's not that guy. And I think as things calm down, and they're going to, it's not going to be this crazy forever. More people are going to gravitate towards a show like Fallon, just like I think they'll gravitate towards a show like this, where you get a voice of reason in all of this.
Sure.
A voice of reason in the world. You know, nowadays it doesn't seem like people really want a voice of reason. They want you to rant about the other side and, you know, confirm their beliefs. I'm trying to be a voice of reason. So we'll see what happens. 407-916-5400. You can text to 23680. I'm going to play the voice of reason of the week in the next segment. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
You know what's beyond reason? Yaffee is now on YouTube. Go to YouTube now and just search Beyond Reason Radio. Your safe space for conservative thought, not for political correctness. Yaffee is back right now.
So I got a text that came in, and you can text the show to 23680 if you want to comment on anything. It can be Beyond Reason or a voice of reason, because this is Beyond Reason Radio. Person says Lieberman has made a statement in the past when asked about having conservative ideas. His reply was, well, my entire family has been Democrats, but I see many ideas differently. Said that on Hannity more than once. Apparently, Hannity and him are very close. So a comment on the pick of Lieberman, just Lieberman for FBI director. It seems to be Trump's leading contender. Even Trump admitted that was one of his leading contenders on that. Very interesting. I definitely did not see that coming. I mean, usually I can be Nostra Yaffee on a lot of things, but I did not see that coming. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. Speaking of Donald Trump and the whole investigation of the special counsel, we talked about it on yesterday's show a lot. The idea of Rosenstein to pick the former FBI director Mueller as the special counsel investigating the whole Russia thing. I thought I would play another voice of reason on this. And this guy isn't always a voice of reason, but I thought he made some good comments on this. Representative Jason Chaffetz was on Tucker Carlson last night. And he was asked about this whole special counsel. And he makes a good point here, makes a lot of good points, but he makes a good point here that everybody, you know, this isn't going to calm things down on the Democrat side in a lot of cases. And I made the point that the Democrats are still going to use this. They're already planning what's called the Resistance Summer to have fundraisings and town halls and rallies against Trump for the resistance, like Trump's some kind of brutal dictator or something. It's just ridiculous. And they're going to still continue to push this narrative, and they're going to continue to use this. Chaffetz was asked about this last night, and I thought he was a voice of reason, so this is what he said.
Completely over the top. So do you think that the appointment of Robert Mueller as special counsel to look into this Russia question, whatever that question is, will stop the acceleration we've seen in the last week, talk of impeachment, of removing Trump somehow from office? How would it not?
No, this is not going to slow them down. Now they're just going to change their talking points. The Democrats, by the way, I love their newfound commitment to openness, transparency, and accountability. I mean, where did that come from? All of a sudden, come January 20th, they were all for it. But they're just going to change their talking points and say this administration is in chaos. And by the way, it's under investigation itself. It had to have a special counsel. You'll hear them. I mean, you could just already hear them in advance.
Stop right there. I think he's exactly right. That's going to be it's already started, but that's going to be the new talking point. Look, they're going to go in their campaigns and they're going to go in front of the Senate and they're going to go to the media and they're going to say, look at Trump's presidency. It is in chaos. And look, they are under investigation. And that means, and they'll imply because they're under investigation, that'll mean implication of guilt. And they'll keep pushing that line, saying if he was just a good president and good administration, why would we even need a special counsel? So the idea that the special counsel is going to quiet things down entirely, of course not, because a lot of this is politics, as it usually is. So I thought that was an actual real good point. He continues on here.
Insatiable desire. They have no ideas. They have no policies. And so it's their scorched earth mentality and approach to just say, let's burn it to the ground. And that's their approach.
Okay, stop right there.
Do you think, and since you work...
I think he's exactly right on that, too. The Democrats from the beginning, and it's not just, Democrats, but the left in general and some of these far leftist movements, before Trump was inaugurated, even during the campaign, they had this sort of scorched earth tactics against Trump, talking about impeachment even before he's inaugurated. Some of these protests that are just outlandish, and some of the things that's been talked about against him that are just outlandish. All you have to do is go on Twitter and see some of the stuff said about him by notable leftists. It's going to ruin their credibility. That's their approach right now. I don't know if it can continue to work. And I'm actually going to get to that in the second hour, because there was a piece in Bloomberg that talked about that by a liberal himself who said Trump's biggest friends is the opposition. Believe it or not. One of the biggest things that's helping Trump is his opposition. And I thought it was a really interesting point. So I want you to stay with me in the second hour. But Javits continues on here.
There and you're with them in the gym or at lunch or whatever. Do you think the Democratic members we see on television alleging a conspiracy involving Trump and Putin believe that there was actual collusion between the two?
If they do, where's the evidence? I'm happy to pursue it, but I don't have anybody actually presenting me any evidence. And now that we're this many months into it, come up with something. I mean, you last week or so, Maxine Waters, saying that somehow I was suspect, that my ties to the Kremlin. Are you kidding me? I live in Utah, for goodness sake. Come on. They are just
you can't
nonstop,
even see Russia from
no
your house,
accountability. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I can see it. It's just right out, just over the Great Salt Lake. It's right over there.
But is it, I know there's no evidence. I don't even think we know that the Russians hacked John Podesta's emails. I've talked to people on the Intel Committee who say there's actually no evidence of that. But I wonder if the people alleging this conspiracy have bought into it themselves. I know we're getting to motive, but I just can't resist asking you, do you think that some of them are sincere?
I think some of them probably want to believe it, even absent evidence. I think their sincerity is probably there, but a lot of them, I just don't. But if you try to go even an inch deep into what sort of evidence that they have, they got nothing.
So he says, I believe a lot of them want to believe it. I think he's exactly right on that. They might be convincing themselves to sincerity. It's not so much that they think there's nothing there. It's just they have bought into so much of the stuff against Trump that they want to believe it because of their preconceived notions against Trump.
The thought that crossed my mind listening to that is a lot of the Democrats, whether for show or for real, think where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
The problem is that I see is the media is making the smoke.
Yeah. Well, and we already played the clip yesterday of the whole impeachment talks. There is no doubt. I mean, Rachel Maddow's on the show every night trying to connect Trump to Russia. We played Keith Olbermann, who's just pretty much gone insane about this, saying Trump's a Russian spy. Now, I will say this. Trump started a little bit of this because he was very friendly towards Russia and Putin policy-wise. He promoted policies that were a lot friendlier towards Russia than most Republicans and most Democrats. And that's where a lot of this started. And then Trump didn't help himself when he said, when Bill O'Reilly interviewed him, and he said, Putin's a killer. And Trump said, well, there are a lot of killers, kind of justifying what Putin's been doing. Sure. When you hear stuff like that, it makes you think, this is kind of strange. Why are you doing that? But what's happened is the leftist media has taken that and they've taken it to the absolute extreme that there's some kind of collusion between him and Putin, or maybe it's just that's Trump's foreign policy beliefs.
Just like Trump and the U.S. need China's help to contain North Korea, Trump apparently feels he needs Russia's help in the fight against ISIS.
Well, yeah, and even the whole conversation that he apparently leaked stuff to the Russians last week, and it started this whole controversy about that. That whole conversation was focused on the fact, and McMaster said this, and Trump said this himself, that he wanted to give Russia information to help in the fight against ISIS. Mm-hmm. So you're right. There has been a lot of takes from Trump that he believes being friendly with Russia will help us in the fight against ISIS. Not only that, and I've said this on the show before, the Russian ambassador and the Russians have sent diplomats, not just to Trump, but to other American diplomats and American senators and congressmen, because they are trying to get the U.S. to back off of Russia's attempt in Ukraine and Crimea. And they're trying to push a narrative that Russia's right in what they're doing, and they're trying to put pressure on it. So that's being at play here. So there's stuff going on, but they've taken it to this absolute extreme for political purposes that there's some kind of collusion, or they didn't even go to the Keith Olbermann extreme where they practically say Trump's a Russian spy or even being paid by the Russians. And when you make accusations like that, you need some evidence. You really need some kind of evidence other than just, well, I have a feeling. That's not going to be good enough. That's why Rubio and Paul Ryan and others yesterday were saying we need the facts in a lot of this stuff before we make judgments. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We have a lot more to get to. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Subscribe to the Beyond Reason podcast today on your Stitcher app and hear the voice of reason anytime. The place where we talk faith, culture, and politics. Beyond Reason Radio continues.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. This is your voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. Make sure to send me a friend request on Facebook, or you can follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. And you can check the podcast. If you miss any of the show, check the podcast of the show anywhere podcasts are available. Best thing to do, download the iHeartRadio app. You can check. Just search Beyond Reason Radio on the iHeartRadio app. You can find all the podcasts there. You can also find the morning show, Good Morning Orlando. Just search Bud Henninger on the iHeartRadio app. And we are live on News Radio 102.5 WFLA, and you can listen to that station on the iHeartRadio app as well. I just got a text that came in, totally different subject. But he said, it's been a very sad day. I was sad this morning over the suicide of Chris Cornell. Chris Cornell, the news came out this morning that he had died and that it was a suicide. He was the lead singer of Soundgarden, and he was also the lead singer of Audioslave.
He was called one of the founders of the grunge genre of music, yeah.
And I got to say, I was sad as well because he was a great performer. I love both of those bands, actually. And I love a lot of his music, and he was incredibly talented. It's sad. It's definitely sad to see when you see someone that talented who has so much going for him, who's done so much for the music industry, unfortunately kill himself. It makes me sad as well. Go listen to some of his music, I guess. I actually did listen to a little bit of it today. I love it. I'm a big fan of that kind of music, because I grew up in that era. So of course I'm going to like it. But, so yeah, I have to agree with you there. So why haven't we been talking about healthcare? We have been so distracted by everything else that's going on in the news and in the world, especially with Trump. And I want to start talking about some policy stuff again. Let's get to the policy stuff. Let's get to the debates on healthcare. Let's get to the debates on tax reform. We have to get to foreign policy debates as well, what we should do with Israel. You know, there was a report today that there was a U.S. strike against some Syrian fighters. and possibly some Hezbollah fighters as well, and ISIS fighters in southern Syria. That's a big deal. That's kind of a reversal of what Trump said he was going to do in the campaign. We'll see. I think he gives a lot of leeway to the military to make those decisions, but
with everything that's going on in the world, that's almost a sidebar.
I know,
story,
right?
You know?
I know, right? It's just crazy. But one of the reasons I'm saying that is in terms of healthcare. I found this great article from Dr. Dean Waldman. It's in the Investors Business Daily commentary section, one of their opinion pieces. And he gives some facts about the Republicans' plan, their healthcare plan, the ACHA, American Healthcare Act. And he gives a little bit of perspective. He's a little bit of a voice of reason in all of this. And I thought it was pretty interesting. He starts out, supporters of the American Healthcare Act claim an unparalleled victory, a promise fulfilled, and a cure for our failing healthcare systems. Detractors see the end of the world. Thousands will die from the lack of health insurance. He says, let's all take a step back from the ledge, take a deep cleansing breath, eschew the hyperbole, and consider 6 facts followed by a suggestion.
Okay.
He says, fact 1, nothing has happened. Nothing at all. Despite the shock and awe, regardless of proclamations of insurance for everybody on the one hand or doomsday on the other, the HCA has not impacted the health care of a single American in any way, shape, or form. Hasn't changed yet. And there's a reason for that, and that goes to fact number 2. Hasn't passed the Senate yet. The Senate is likely to change the bill, he says, that the House just passed. They may totally revise it, and they could even pass nothing at all. Who knows what the Senate will do? Let's back up from the ledge a little bit. Then fact number 3 says the ACA, Affordable Care Act, created 12 new taxes, such as the medical device tax and earned income tax and yada, yada, yada. He says 4 previously existing taxes were increased, including the biofuel tax and the Medicare payroll tax. The AHCA, the new one, the Republican plan, rolls back virtually all of these taxes. There is a good chance that the Senate will leave the rollbacks in place. That translates to more take-home pay, more money in your wallet, and probably more job opportunities. So some good things there. Fact number 4, he says the Republican plan eliminates Obamacare's mandates, such as the individual employer mandates. The bulk of Obamacare regulatory and administrative apparatus remains intact and untouched. And I agree with him. He says here that's a big problem with it. But it's funny to see the Democrats act like thousands will die when a lot of Obamacare remains untouched. This is fact number 5. The Congressional Budget Office released an assessment of the projected effects of the original Republican bill. They have not scored the amended one passed on May 4th, which is quite different from the original. So the March 9th one is irrelevant. Now, the Democrats said they shouldn't have passed it until it was scored. I don't think they would have cared if it was scored or not. Then he says fact number 6, the Republican bill that the Senate will take up expends many additional billions of dollars to stabilize insurance markets and to create high-risk pools. So another reasons why maybe they should, back up from the ledge a little bit. But he says there are definitely a lot of problems with that. But he says this, both the media and especially both the public and especially the media need to stop the vitriol, tone down the bombast, convert hysteria into tranquility, and let the senators do their work in peace. Oh, this isn't going to happen. That's not going to happen at all. I mean, I know you're trying, but yeah. I appreciate you listening to the first hour. We have one more hour to go. We are on till 9 p.m. If you missed any of the first hour, check the podcast anywhere podcasts are available later tonight, or check the video on our Facebook page, Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, Tom Benson producing. Have a lot more to get to. Trump had a press conference today. We'll play some of that audio and much more. So stay tuned. I'll be right back.
Well, I find some kind of conviction.
I hear there's some controversy surrounding President Trump. Is that,
Well, there's been some.
Is there some going on?
There,
Maybe?
it's in all the papers.
Oh yeah. Is it? Yes. So this is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. Yes, the whole thing with Trump continues today. The whole Comey thing, and what he said about Mike Flynn to Comey, and the whole Russia thing, and that's continuing on. We have a special counsel. Now they're saying that Joseph Lieberman, and Trump agreed with this, is the top contender for the new FBI director, which is very fascinating. I did not see that coming. Usually I can see stuff like that coming. That kind of came out of left field to me. A lot of people think it's a good pick because the Democrats would have to confirm it. We'll see what happens. I don't know what is. I guess he has some experience in law enforcement.
Yeah, back in when he was from the state of Connecticut. Yeah,
in the 80s. It's been a while.
And he voted for Hillary in the last election.
Did he really?
Yes, he did. Although he's
forget him then.
He's called a good friend of Mr. Trump's.
Forget him then. Yeah, he's best friends with John McCain, and John McCain doesn't like Trump either. So We'll see what that happens. But Donald Trump had a press conference today, which he answered questions on this. We're going to play some of the audio of this, and we're going to get into some other stuff dealing with Trump, because I found a couple of articles that bring a couple of different points of view on the chaos surrounding the Trump presidency and the Trump administration. There's one thing that talks about how Trump's best friend right now is Trump's opposition, believe it or not. Do you guys agree with that? I think there's a lot of truth to that. And the person who wrote this article, I found it in Bloomberg, is actually a leftist himself, someone who opposes Trump himself, but agrees that the way the left has reacted to Trump from the beginning really just helps Trump in the long run. And then I found another article last week. I actually posted it on my Facebook page. You can send me a friend request on Facebook. Just search Michael Yaffee. I'll accept it. I'm always posting stuff. I posted this story from Ben Shapiro. I know Tom Benson's laughing because he sees it all the time, I bet, on Facebook. All the kinds of stuff I'm posting.
No. It just struck me funny that you're asking people to be your friend. Are you that lonely?
Please be my friend. Maybe. I'm so lonely. But yes, you can. I'm always posting stuff on my Facebook page, and I posted the article from Ben Shapiro, who basically made the case that Trump is his own worst enemy. That while the media is definitely after him, and while the left is definitely after him, really the worst enemy of Trump is Trump himself. And a lot of people didn't like that. A lot of people didn't like Ben Shapiro's take on that. Now, Ben Shapiro was a never-Trumper. He didn't vote for Trump, but he has been a lot more supportive than maybe some other never-Trumpers.
Well, one of the biggest things that bothers me about all this that's going on are reports, especially from Eric Erickson the other day, that Trump does not listen to the people around him.
Yeah, we talked about that, Eric Erickson's report, because he said the person who leaked about the Russia thing, the Russia meeting, was a fan of Trump's.
And it's always been, a lot of people say that if you're going to run a business and be successful, surround yourself with great people. Now, he's got some great people around him, but you got to pay attention to what they're saying.
Yeah, so we're going to go over some of that stuff, but I first want to get into the latest news of the day, in which Trump had a press conference today, and he was asked some questions about all this, and believe it or not, his answers were pretty good. Were pretty reasonable. At least the few that I heard were good. And the problem is, then he'll go on Twitter and say something completely different or whatever. But and we'll go over what he said on Twitter. Actually, I'll just do that right now. What he said on Twitter this morning is he tweeted out, "This is the single greatest witch hunt of a politician in American history." There's actually a lot of truth to that. I mean, I've never seen such attacks on a president in my life.
Headline in one of the op pieces in the New York Times today is Trump a witch?
Oh, jeez Louise.
Exactly.
Oh, come on. Yeah, I think Jake Tapper said, well, some presidents have been assassinated. It's like, that's not what Trump's talking. Stop it. And then he also tweeted this. He said, with all the illegal acts that took place in the Clinton campaign and Obama administration, There was never a special counsel appointed. Very defensive there. Somebody, a friend of mine on Facebook, who I'm sure is listening right now, he sent me a cartoon that showed the FBI director, the special counsel, I think, he's on a desk, and one pile you see Hillary, and there's papers, it says evidence against Hillary. There's papers and boxes everywhere. And then on the right you see evidence of Trump, and there's nothing. And then you see the donkey, who's supposed to be the Democrats, say, this is why we have to keep investigating.
Got to get something in the box, the inbox.
So I thought that was actually pretty funny. But so Trump was asked about this from one of the reporters, and this is what he said. Go ahead and play cut one for me, Tom.
Does anybody have any questions? I'm shocked. John,
that's pretty good.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I'd like to get your reaction to Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein's decision to appoint a special counsel to investigate the Russian interference in the campaign. Was this the right move, or is this part of a witch hunt?
Well, I respect the move, but the entire thing has been a witch hunt, and there is no collusion between certainly myself and my campaign, but I can always speak for myself and the Russians, zero. I think it divides the country. I think we have a very divided country because of that and many other things. So I can tell you that we want to bring this great country of ours together, John. And I will also say very strongly we've had tremendous success. You look at our job numbers. You look at what's going on at the border, as we discussed before. You look at what will be happening. You're going to see some incredible numbers with respect to the success of General Mattis and others with the ISIS situation. The numbers are staggering, how successful they've been, the military has been. Tomorrow, as you know, I'm going to Saudi Arabia, going to Israel, we're going to Rome, and we have the G7. We have a lot of great things going on. So I hate to see anything that divides. I'm fine with whatever people want to do, but we have to get back to running this country really, really well. We've made tremendous progress in the last 100 and some odd days, tremendous progress. And you see job numbers, you see all of the production that's starting, plants starting to open again, haven't been open in years. I'm very proud of it. That's what I want to be focused on, because believe me, there's no collusion. Russia is fine, but whether it's Russia or anybody else, my total priority, believe me, is the United States of America. So thank you very much.
So listening to that, I think that was actually a good comment, and that's exactly the approach he needs to take. What did he do in that approach? He basically said, look, I believe it's a witch hunt, but you can have the special counsel. They're just going to not find anything. But what we need to do is we need to get back to the work, and we need to focus on working for the American people. And he pushed the narrative that that's exactly what he's doing. He's focusing again on policy, focusing again on his foreign policy trip, focusing again and talking to the American people, said, I'm just going to continue to work for you. This is a reasonable and a good approach by him. If he could continue to do that, if he could continue to focus.
And stay off Twitter.
And stay off Twitter, yes, which he won't do. Because he says he always has to punch back. That's his thing. But if he can continue to do that, I think it would be good for him to do that. Because I think a lot of the American people still want to give him the benefit of the doubt and still put him in there because they believed he could change things and get things done and work for the American people. But he can't get those things done if he's constantly just throwing punches. And, I'm not against it. A lot of people criticize George W. Bush for not fighting back. And I think that is a legitimate criticism. The problem is sometimes the way Trump fights back is he fights back like a crazy person. As he's falling down, he just throws wild punches everywhere. And it's like, no, you can fight back, but you need to fight back in a focused way and get your message out there. The reason why America voted for you is because you had a message of making America great again. It was that idea. The idea of Trump was that he was an outsider who was going to come in, shake things up, and make America great again. If he can focus on that part of his message, he can do well. The problem is it's Donald Trump, and he doesn't always do that. Okay, I want to play. There's another cut here. He was asked about the whole thing with Comey and Flynn and some other stuff. So this is what he said. Play cut 2 for me.
Did you at any time urge former FBI Director James Comey in any way, shape, or form to close or to back down the investigation into Michael Flynn? And also, as you look back...
No. Next question.
Stop right there. I just thought that was funny. He just, nope. Next question. It's such a Trump thing. Okay, go on.
As you look back over the past 6 months or year, have you had any recollection where you've wondered if anything you have done has been something that might be worthy of criminal charges in these investigations or impeachment, as some on the left are implying?
I think it's totally ridiculous. Everybody thinks so. And again, we have to get back to working our country properly so that we can take care of the problems that we have. We have plenty of problems. We've done a fantastic job. We have a tremendous group of people, millions and millions of people out there that are looking at what you had just said and said, what are they doing? Director Comey was very
stop right there. Once again, he stayed on message. Once again, he talked about working for the American people. And this is the approach Obama took too. You know, Obama was criticized for a lot of things and he would just kind of laugh it off. Oh, that's just ridiculous. And it wasn't ridiculous a lot of the times, but it was an effective strategy. So I think it's kind of smart for Trump to do that. He continues on here.
Popular with most people. I actually thought when I made that decision, and I also got a very, very strong recommendation, as you know, from the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein. But when I made that decision, I actually thought that it would be a bipartisan decision, because you look at all of the people on the Democratic side, not only the Republican side, that was saying such terrible things about Director Comey. Then he had the very poor performance on Wednesday. That was a poor performance.
Okay. I think that was actually really telling. He actually revealed a lot there, even though it's not getting a lot of attention. He said right there, I thought it would get a lot of bipartisan support. I think I think he really did believe that. I think that was one of the reasons why it was rushed. He did not expect the backlash because of it was Comey.
Right.
And he came up and he just said there, I think it got a lot of bipartisan support. The other thing he said there is it was the latest press conference performance by Comey. And I think that press conference is where Trump really decided that he has to get rid of Comey. He really didn't like what Comey was saying in that press conference. Now, he probably didn't like what was saying about Russia because he still wouldn't vindicate Trump on Russia, and Trump was mad at that. But I think there was actually some moments of truth in there revealing of what Trump was really thinking. But the biggest thing was, yes, he goes, I thought this would get bipartisan support, and he underestimated the other side. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. We have a lot more to get to on this. It's Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Download the iHeartRadio app and catch the Beyond Reason Radio podcast. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
Yes, welcome back to the show, everyone. We are on Facebook Live as well, just like the Beyond Reason Radio Facebook page. You can follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. Send me a friend request on Facebook. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We have Tom Benson producing. According to Fox News, Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein knew that the FBI Director Comey would be removed before he penned a now famous memo that was cited by the White House as a rationale for the firing. That is, Fox News is reporting this, but that's what Democratic senators said Thursday after a briefing with the senior DOJ official. Rosenstein, who a day earlier named a special counsel to oversee the Russia probe that Comey was helping lead before his ouster, briefed all U.S. senators on Capitol Hill Thursday. Senator Claire McCaskill said he knew that Comey was going to be removed prior to him writing his memo. That being, they're kind of making this as a big deal, big breaking news. Didn't we kind of already know this? I thought this was kind of what we already knew from all the revelations last week in terms of Trump's own comments that he said he was going to fire him.
Yeah, exactly. I don't understand what the big deal is. So what?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. It doesn't mean Rosenstein didn't believe what he said in his memo.
Unless they're alluding to the fact that Rosenstein crafted his memo to support Trump.
Yeah, and I think that is what they're alluding to, but I mean, you don't know that. Maybe Rosenstein really did believe it, but that doesn't mean he already knew that Trump was going to do that. I don't know. The biggest thing was they were kind of making this as a big deal, breaking news, but I feel like I just kind of thought we already knew this. So maybe I'm wrong on that. So I found this story from Bloomberg by Clive Crook.
Great name.
I know, I was about to say. What a name, Clive Crook. Oh, dear Lord. But here's the headline. And I think this makes a really, really good point, and I want your take on it as well. You can call 407-916-5400 or text to 23680. So it says this, and this is by someone who does not like Trump. It says, Trump's opponents are his only hope. It says, the president has made a watertight case for his unfitness for office, but he has friends in the media. Very interesting. Now, he talks about, the beginning of the article, he talks about all the things that he thinks are bad about Trump. He's incompetent, the Comey thing, yada, yada, yada. He shows how he's unfit for office, yada, yada, yada. He bets that Trump is either going to, be kicked out or lose the next election. And then it says this, well, he hasn't learned. He's the same incompetent braggart as before, only more so. Even if the president's powers are constrained, as the courts and Congress have shown, his personality and temperament can't be. So then he says this, he goes, so am I certain to win my bet, right? So I'm certain to win my bet, right? He says, the thing that gives me pause isn't Trump, but his opponents. They've been the secret of his success throughout. His great enablers. So he's saying that Trump's opponents, and I've been saying this as well, are actually the secret, one of the secrets anyways, to Trump's success. He says,
I can see it.
Yeah, oh yeah. He says, I maintain they're the reason he won the election. He says, and sure enough, if their own misguided way, they're still pulling for the president. Do you guys agree or disagree? From the beginning of Trump's time in office, Democrats and their allies in the mainstream press. Oh, he admits that the mainstream press is Democrat. Look at that. That was an interesting little slip there. The Democrats and their allies in the mainstream press have been celebrating every misstep, putting the worst possible construction on every dumb comment, howling at every pratfall, one day hyperventilating, and the next day yucking it up. All as if to tell Trump supporters, there you are, morons. You see, we were right. However justified, that chorus of contempt for Trump's supporters isn't going to encourage them to defect. This is so true, because I was someone, in the primaries especially, who was not the biggest Trump supporter. But I end up coming out here and defending Trump a lot more than I thought I would, and a lot of it is because the Democrats and the left have gone nutso. And you can't help but support him. You can't help to say, maybe this guy's onto something. These guys are going crazy. Maybe he's doing something right. And that's what the point he's making here.
Well, there's also the fact that a lot of people say if they're upset over what Trump's doing, then Trump's doing what he should be doing.
Exactly right. He says, however, justify that chorus contempt for Trump supporters isn't going to encourage them to defect. It will allow them to believe, also with justification, that the press isn't dedicated to telling it straight on the firing of Comey or the sharing of intelligence with Russia or anything else Trump does. Have I not been saying that on this show for the last week? Mm-hmm. Have I not been saying that it's so obvious that they're more about a political agenda than really trying to find the truth? And that's just going to make people want to support Trump more. He says the refusal from the start to give him a chance continues to undermine his critics' credibility, even though by now he had his chance and blown it. Remember, this is someone who doesn't like Trump. But I think that adds a little bit of credibility to what he's saying, because this is a leftist who doesn't like Trump, but sees that the left has gone crazy and that it's just helping Trump. He says, I still expect to win my bet. His opponents are a tremendous asset, never to be underestimated, but Trump is still Trump. He looks beyond saving. My neighbors, in case you're wondering, will pay up with a smile. They're good people. So he made a bet with them that Trump is going to lose, I believe, going to lose the next election. I don't even know if it says. He says, I bet my West Virginia neighbors that President Trump's support will soon collapse, and regardless of whether he manages to stay in office, the Republican Party will take a beating in next year's midterms elections. So, that's another thing that's kind of been talked about, actually. The Democrats are getting a little arrogant about the midterm elections. There is a chance that they will take some seats, but they have a long way to go to completely take the House. And the fact is, there was a lot of other reasons other than just the presidency that encouraged people to vote Republican in a lot of these local congressional races. And that's something that the Democrats have not learned. They are still trying to base their whole midterm campaign, the Summer of Resistance, on an anti-Trump message. I don't know if that's going to work. It might, but it misunderstands the reason why people voted for Trump. And actually there was a article in the Wall Street Journal this morning that had a good quote on this. That said this by Daniel Henninger, said this in the Wall Street Journal. He says, polls suggest most Trump voters aren't much moved by these events. After surviving the 2016 election, the Trump voter remains fixed on achieving the Trump agenda. The economy, healthcare, taxes, education, America's global standing, financial reform, immigration, infrastructure, and trade. They are willing to put up with a lot because they know that President Donald J. Trump is the only vessel they got. I think there's a lot of truth to that, and that's something that the left, they're getting a little arrogant in terms of the midterm elections. We'll see what happens. They think they've struck gold at being against Trump. They will energize the base a little bit and maybe pick up some seats, but they have a long way to go, and they have to remember why people supported Trump. They were willing to look past a lot of his flaws because they thought he was right on the overall big picture.
And the midterms are still a long way off.
It's 2018. You're right. There could be a lot that could happen.
Just look at everything that's happened in the past 2 weeks. You could just imagine what's going to happen in the next 2 years and 4 months?
Well, for one, if we have some real military victories, that'll help Trump. If the economy really picks up, that'll help Trump. There's already been progress on immigration in terms of lack of illegal immigration. That'll help Trump. His support of the veterans and his support of police will definitely help him in a lot of those elections. So to think that Trump is just, out of it forever, I wouldn't make the bet that he makes, that it's going to be a beating in the next midterms. We will see. So that made the point that Trump's greatest friend, one of his greatest friends, is the media and his opposition. Now, what is Trump's biggest enemy? There's a point on that we're going to get to, and we'll get to that next. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
Listen to the latest episodes of Beyond Reason. Download the podcast at Spreaker.com. This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
So in the last segment, we talked about what maybe one of Trump's best friends, his biggest ally, is his opposition. Because the opposition has overplayed their hand. The opposition has gone just insane, nutso, as I like to say, and I've been saying that since the beginning. People are going to get sick of the outrage, especially if there's nothing really to be outraged about yet. That eventually, if there is something to be outraged at Trump about, people are just going to be sick of the outrage and support him anyway because they're going to be extra defensive of Trump. I think there was a lot of validity to that. But what is Trump's biggest enemy then? If his biggest ally is his enemies, then what's his biggest enemy? Well, there was an article in the National Review by a conservative writer and radio host Ben Shapiro. And this is what he says. The title of this is interesting, and he's talking about what he thinks is Trump's biggest enemy. He says Trump isn't playing 8D chess. And what he means by that is a lot of his supporters say this is all part of Trump's master plan. He's a super genius and whatever. And Ben Shapiro is saying, no, that's not what's really happening here. He says the president's character flaws are getting in the way of his agenda. He says this week, President Trump proved once again that character matters. Trump failed miserably on all fronts, not because of his political principles, which were never philosophically conservative, but because Trump is a deeply flawed man and thus an even more flawed leader. Now, I posted this on my Facebook, by the way. You can send me a friend request on Facebook. And a lot of debate came from this article. I have a lot of Trump supporters that follow me on Facebook and hated this. They don't like Ben Shapiro because he wasn't a big Trump supporter. And some other people who really liked it and really agreed. So there's still this divide going on in the conservative side over Trump, which is actually very interesting.
You can't handle the truth.
Exactly right. People commenting saying this is just ridiculous, yada, yada, yada. But I think there's some good points here. Even if you're a Trump supporter, there's some good points that you could admit with this.
And perhaps improve on.
Well, exactly
and eliminate
right.
the flaws.
Yeah, it's kind of like with Ann Coulter kind of being critical of Trump now. People say, oh, she's betrayed him. And it's like, no, she's just trying to push him to do the right thing. And I think that's okay. He continues on here. He says his obsession with others' perceptions led him to fire FBI Director James Comey, who should have been fired by all rights months ago for the sin of failing to respect Trump's bizarre theories about Obama-era wiretapping. Meanwhile, in an act of extreme arrogance, Trump appeared on national television and proceeded to destroy the supposed rationales for firing Comey. His pathological insecurities then led him to tweet about tapes of Comey, which he then refused to allow his communications team to sweep under the rug. He says, there is no 8D underwater quantum chess. There is only Trump. And as the so-called law of the land in business states in business, the upper limit of a president's competence can never be superseded by that of his subordinates. And Trump's competence is tied directly to his character defects. So he's making the point here that Trump's biggest enemy is Trump. He says, but many Republicans overlooked character as an argument against Trump, and they continue to do so today, although it is his character that leads him to jump on rakes. According to April 2017 poll from the Desert News, 57% of Republicans now say it would not matter to them if a candidate for president had an extramarital affair in the past. That compares with 42% of Americans back in 2002. That number also includes 53% of white evangelicals. So it says that they don't even care if Trump had an affair. They don't even care about a lot of Trump's character flaws. They're willing to support him for other reasons, which is exactly what I've been saying on this show, even today. He continues on here, he goes, why? Because of President Trump, of course. It's obviously silly to argue about whether this has been a principled stand by Republicans. It isn't, any more than it's a principled opposition rather than political convenience driving Democrats to turn against adultery among politicians. But it does point to a bet conservatives made in the 2016 election, that success equals character. Trump's business career became for many conservatives an all-purpose fallback argument in behalf of his character. Because conservatives believe in a meritocracy, they tend to believe that those who are successful are not cheats, liars, or scoundrels in the private sector. To understand conservatives' willingness to overlook Donald Trump's personal problems, it's important to understand the context in which Trump's fans saw him as a real estate magnate. Real estate takes a certain level of expertise. It takes fluency with numbers, yada, yada, yada. Success in real estate takes a bunch of different things, a bunch of different skills. Trump, his conservative defenders said, was a real estate mogul, the most powerful real estate mogul in America. That made him, by inductive reasoning, a decent person despite his adulterous liaisons. But many conservatives refuse to acknowledge the 2 points about Trump that should have given them cause for concern. Even if they believe that somewhat flawed meritocracy character link, first, Trump didn't earn his magnate status. Trump inherited a massive amount of wealth from his father, yada, yada, yada. He says, second and more important, there is at least one area of this where conservatives discard the supposed character success link in the entertainment industry. Conservatives have always understood that talent for entertaining and quality of character may actually be inversely linked. You'd be hard-pressed to find a conservative touting Kim Kardashian's success as proof of her good character. He says Trump is an entertainer. He acts like an entertainer. He obsesses about his ratings. He spends hours on his hair. He agonizes over public perceptions of his successes and failures. He cannot bear to be out of the spotlight, and he feels personally threatened by those who occupy it more than he does for any period of time. He says conservatives would pretend that Paris Hilton would make a good president because she's so successful in her other ventures. Yet many conservatives told themselves a story whereby Trump was more Warren Buffett than Paris Hilton, so they could continue to maintain the positive image of his character. Ben Shapiro continues on here and says, but he isn't, and not all aspects of character are created equal when it comes to governing. Some bad men govern well, others govern poorly. It's fair to argue that personal fidelity to one's spouse has little to do with governing ability. Some Americans made the argument in the 1990s. With Bill Clinton and all that stuff in the 1990s. He continues on here. He says, Trump's flaws, however, differ from Clinton's. He has the same need for the love of the world at large, a love that drove Clinton away from ideology and toward governing centrism, and which will likely move Trump in the same direction. But, unlike Clinton, Trump is also deeply arrogant about his own abilities, which means that he micromanages rather than delegating. He's also spontaneous where Clinton was calculating, which means he makes more unforced errors. Trump hates details, whereas Clinton loved them, which means Clinton was fluent with his policy proposals. None of this cuts in favor of Trump's success. He says conservatives are now dealing with Trump in one of three ways: praying, as Speaker of the House did, practicing outright sycophancy, as his entire White House staff appears to be doing, and calling out Trump when he makes mistakes. He says, so far, the only question is whether Trump has enough character to acknowledge when he made a mistake, if anyone is willing to speak honestly to him. So far, the answer isn't looking good. Ben Shapiro ends here. He says, character still matters in the presidency. Age 70 is a little late to be getting started in developing some. But if Trump wants to have a successful presidency, he'd better start now. So his basic point here, and I read a lot of that. I don't usually read a whole article like that, but it was really interesting. His basic point here is this. One, Trump's biggest enemy the biggest point he made in this article is Trump's biggest enemy is himself. But two, a lot of Trump supporters believe that because he was, quote unquote, a successful businessman, that would make him a good president. That ignores the fact that he had a lot of failings in business and so far, which we were going for. But they forget that really what made him successful in the last few decades was not the successful businessman part of him, but the fact that he was a successful entertainer and was able to use that entertainment value to market his brand and to get attention to his brand. But because he was always focused on that successful entertainment part of him, it bleeds over to the presidency, has those same character flaws in the presidency, and he's using things that helped him become a successful entertainer and campaigner, frankly, but that does not always translate into being a successful president or someone who can govern successfully. And so his biggest enemy are those character flaws. And that if Trump wants to have a successful presidency, he has to work on that and focus on actually governing and getting things done, which he ran on. Or if he's not willing to do that, he needs to stop micromanaging and actually delegate to the people around him who are really smart. What do you all think about this? I think there's actually a lot of truth to this.
There's an old song, I think it goes way back to when neither one of us was around, but it was entitled Accentuate the Positive and Eliminate the Negative.
Yeah, exactly right. Now, I mean, there's a lot of presidents who have had a lot of character flaws, but Trump's specific character flaws have kind of gotten in the way. Now, this doesn't mean that a lot of this is a witch hunt. I think it is. It doesn't mean that the media isn't against him. I think they are. Doesn't mean that the left is overreacted. We just did a whole segment on that. And it doesn't mean really that Trump doesn't have a lot to offer. The fact is, Trump does have a lot to offer. One of the biggest things he has to offer is one of the biggest reasons he was elected, and it's the fact that he is an outsider. And he could really use that and bring that to get things done in government where other politicians wouldn't do that because they're politicians.
Well, getting back to my analogy about the Democrats think there's a lot of smoke.
Yes.
So there must be a fire, and it's the media that's creating the smoke.
Right.
Well, Trump's flaws, character flaws, is fuel for that fire.
Well, exactly right. I mean, the Comey thing was such a big disaster because the way he did it was a disaster. The timing was a disaster, but the response was even more of a disaster because he would contradict his own staff. And then when they would criticize him for that, he says, oh, well, my staff can't get things right all the time. Do we really believe that? I think on big things, we should expect his staff to get those things right. But because Trump shoots from the hip, is not organized, doesn't have his organized message, and gets on Twitter, that stuff gets all confused. So we've been completely distracted with all this stuff when we should be talking about healthcare and tax reform and foreign policy. And a lot of that, I'm sorry, falls at the feet of Trump. Does that mean his presidency is over? No, of course that. Does that mean he hasn't gotten a lot of things done? No, he's actually gotten a lot of good things done that I believe. Does that mean that he still can't be a decent president? No, he can still be a decent president. He can still do some good things. Luckily, he has some good advisors around him, including Mike Pence, who I think he should listen to more often, and he can get a lot of those things done. We'll see what happens, but I thought it was a good point with two different angles on everything that's going on that can kind of bring perspective on all that. By the way, if you missed any of it, you can catch the podcast. Go back and listen to all of this hour and really think about it. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. By the way, we have things that made Yaffee laughy. This one might make me cry more than laugh. I'm not sure, but we'll find out. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Well, what I'm going to talk about in the last segment of the show might be the most beyond reason thing I've ever talked about. It was something that I was not really aware of, some trend that I was not too aware of, but I saw a couple things on social media, so I looked into it. And it might signal the end of America. It might be what brings down our country. It is time for that part of the show once again. Yes, it is things that make Yaffee laughy. This case, I don't know if I want to laugh or cry. So, Tom Benson, do you know what a romper is? Do you have any idea what a romper is?
A romper? No, I don't.
A romper is usually something that women wear, and it's like a one-piece suit.
Oh, my. Yes, I've seen pictures of this, and now guys are wearing them?
Yes, they're calling it either the male romper, romp him, or bro romper, or bromper. Here, there's a report here from CNN Headline News where they were talking about it. Go and play the audio for me, Tom Benson.
Could this be the start of a new trend? Someone has designed a romper, allegedly, for grown-up men, like Heinz. It's called a romp him. Yes, it is, Susan. It's a one-piece. And it's basically a onesie. The guys behind it have raised almost, actually, it's more than $100,000 now. I just checked, it's about $125,000. Their original goal was $10,000. Now, according to their Kickstarter page, they wanted to bring men some clothing that's stylish and comfortable. You guys won't let me finish the story. He's already over here like, The fashion-forward look could set you back about $120. Can I just say, for the ladies who have worn rompers and jumpsuits,
not easy.
Where do you got to take it all the way off to go to the restroom. So our guys have to take it all the way off.
Oh, yeah.
They look cute, though. You're not going to rock the romp him?
No, they don't.
$120.
Oh, that's not what's stopping you. Don't even.
Oh, please.
She brought up a good point, though. I mean, how would they go to the bathroom? The pictures, Tom Benson, are just awful. It's the worst. And then they make it worse because in the pictures of it, like, the rompers that they're wearing are, like, pink or polka dotted and they have models wearing it. Okay, apparently all this started this week when Romp Him was launched on Kickstarter. Romp Him is quite obviously a man-sized romper offered in several pastel colors and prints. They're not sure if this is a joke, but apparently it might actually turn into a trend. It says the campaign presents Romp Him as a mildly obnoxious devil-may-care garment for young men with an abundance of money and or self-confidence who never skip leg day and spend the summer weekends at their bro's house on the Cape, which is not to judge. That is definitely an aesthetic. Said, in fact, it is an aesthetic that men and people that love to look at them are clearly longing for. In 2 days, the Kickstarter has raised more than $136,000, which is 13 times the $10,000 goal they were shooting for. On social media, you may have noticed an explosion of romper-related jokes and assumed the stream of alarming political news had driven people into some sort of dissociative fugue state. I don't know. Oh, dear Lord. I'm telling you, this might be the end of America. This might be the thing that brings America down.
Now let me think. Who would we like to see in a romper? How about Bud Hedinger? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that?
maybe as an endorsement. Do they want Bud to endorse as a romper?
He'd do it. How about
Oh gosh.
How about Bernie Sanders?
Oh, they have Why are you doing this to me, Tom Benson? They have like a picture someone tweeted out, I guess, of an old Sean Connery in an old James Bond movie where he was wearing a romper type suit. I guess it was kind of what he wore to the pool one day.
Yeah.
Or something. Looks like a romper.
Yeah, I think I remember that scene.
It's just I can't do it. This is kind of like the Huggies. Remember, not the Huggies. What is it? What are those things called? The Snuggies.
Yes.
It's another ridiculous. It's just dear. You will never see me wear one. You will never. Kids out there, if you're listening, don't do it. Don't make this start a trend. It will bring down our country. ISIS might leave us alone, though, because they'll just be like, we've just brought ourselves down. It's just done. It's just over.
It throws all off a building.
Exactly. Oh, I thank you all for listening. If that wasn't beyond reason enough, I don't know what was. If you missed any of the show, make sure to check out the podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Send me a friend request on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter @BeyondReasonR. Have a good weekend. I'll catch you guys next week.